Good afternoon. My name is Dan LeFebvre, and I'm going to present an experience I had at Toyota and how I helped them bring agility to a deep hierarchy. So this is Toyota Motor North America, so it's not Japan. This is the IT department inside Toyota Motor North America. Very different than what happens at the manufacturing line, where it was the birthplace of lean and everything else. This is their IT department, which is a traditional large American IT shop. They have 4,500 people in the organization, mostly outsourced. And when I mean mostly outsourced, I'm talking 10% of the people were employees and the rest were contractors. So 450-ish, 500-ish employees. And of course, they had a very defined stage gate process, but they did have small pockets of agile development happening in the organization. Given the situation, we came in to help transition them to Scrum in their IT department. And we started launching what we called waves, which were training collections of teams and have them start doing Scrum. And we helped do Scrums and Meta Scrums with those groups. What we found, though, is that the teams they were launching didn't necessarily relate to each other all the time. So the Scrums became kind of not very well connected or useful because the various teams didn't care about what the other teams were doing. So it wasn't working too well. And the Meta Scrums were a similar situation. The other thing is they organized based on their hierarchy. So they built Scrum teams under managers that were under managers, and with large programs, those became very big hierarchies. So it took a long time to get decisions to get made because they didn't really empower their product owners. Product owners could only go so far, and then it had to go up a chain to get an answer, and then it had to go back. So very long delays around that thing. So I introduced to them this notion of the dual operating model, which comes from John Kotter's book, and he also has an HBR article called Accelerate. And in there, he describes how large organizations always evolve into a hierarchy because they're stable. And they're really good at standard, repeatable process. What they're not good at is anything that requires agility. Anything where you need feedback loops, anything where you have to react quickly to the market, because lots of decisions have to go up the chain. And in order for them to make good decisions, they need information to flow up the chain. Now, how many of you have lived or seen a hierarchy? Okay. When information flows up the chain, is the exact same data that's presented at the bottom the same that's presented at the top, or what's heard at the top? No, the message dilutes along the way. Kind of like the adult game of telephone, right? So, and sometimes it actually distorts. There's this notion called green shifting. Ever heard of green shifting? Right, we're at the team level, this is crap. The next level, we're working on the issue. The next level, we'll have it solved really, really quick. Yes, not a problem, we're right on schedule as it goes up the level. Ever seen this? So the status changes from red at the bottom level to green by the time it gets to someone who's going to make a decision. So their decision is not based on reality anymore. So, so in order to combat that, Kotter talks about creating an alternate organization, kind of a parallel one called the network, which is basically a dynamic network of teams that you put together from people who live in the hierarchy. But when they need to deliver something in an agile fashion, they kind of exit the hierarchy. They still live there as far as HR is concerned and where they get their HR stuff from, but they do their delivery in the network. Okay, that's what we set up there. So, and how we presented it is we're going to launch value streams. We call the value streams for them. It's a word that they're familiar with, but it's basically the collection of teams that need to work together, because the one other thing that was happening is this collection of teams that they put together for delivering something, even if they're large, they didn't have all the skills necessary to deliver the product because it was based on a department. And so they needed people from their infrastructure, or what they call their horizontal groups, in order to deliver systems and servers and things like that in order to make the final end-to-end delivery, but they were not part of the collection of teams. So we talked about is we need to create a true collection of teams which includes members from the horizontal teams. So if you notice here, the teams were made of, when you pull a value stream together, which is a collection of teams delivering value to a particular class of customers. So let's say, for example, the class of customer was dealers, okay? And let's say for incentive programs. Then we grab the teams that are going to be working on the incentive program, plus the people from the horizontals that are needed to deploy the servers and things like that, and make them part of this value stream. And put a meta scrum in front of that to order and prioritize the work for this value stream, and a scrum of scrums for the teams to actually work through their impediments and move things forward. And they would feed into the EMS in order to, again, work with the rest of the organization. So that's what we launched for them. That worked so well that they actually decided to change their annual planning model for this year, where we helped them stop funding projects. Because like all IT shops, they were funding projects. And projects were starting to end, even to the point where the development part of the project was a project that ended when we deployed version 1, and then you had to get approval for the sustaining part of the project, which is they're going to take it from that point on, which could be with different people, and in some cases, different organizations. Like Cognizant would build it, and Infosys would support it. So it was a whole different organization and a team with all that transition, very painful. So decided to go into funding a true value stream, which includes sustaining, where in the whole budgeting model, it's around how many teams do we need in the value stream? Not what projects you need. How many teams do we want to invest in this area? And they made a pitch on the kinds of projects they might do, but it wasn't specific projects. Then what would happen is these projects would be listed and flow to the EMS, where the EMS would then release them into the network in order to deliver value. And that's where they were ending up. When we left them, they were setting up their value streams and starting this model. So example of what happened on one of the results. From one of the team, this large incentive program, which is dealer incentives, when we got there, they had 200 people working on the project. They had been working for 5 years. They had not delivered a single thing. They missed 5 launch dates. Okay. They did the happiness metric, and the way we described the happiness metric was that 5, of course, is you're happy, you're totally ecstatic about being on this team, and 1 means you'd rather be dead. That's how they really described it. And I think the average was like 1.2. They were struggling with this project. So pulled the Andon cord, very Toyota word, on this project. They reduced it from 200 to 25 people. Went from 1 large team, because that's how they treated the 200, like 1 large team, to 3 smaller teams. And they were able to deliver in 6 months. So very large reduction in the cost for this program. They actually got some value delivered, which is an infinite increase in the delivery of value. And the happiness metric moved up to about a 4 for most people. So that's the case study. Any questions?
How long did it take? How long did the overall process take for you to get them to transform?
To get them to transform? Well, we were there for 9 months, and they're still in the process. It took about 6 months before they really started saying we're going to do the funding model and really getting to this value stream thing, because they still wanted to launch lots and lots of teams. Like one of the metrics that really drive them into this kind of strange mode is they had a metric where they wanted to get everyone agile, like 95% of the teams running agile. So they would just want to do training after training after training after training, even though they weren't setting up a structure that was sustainable, right? We really wanted to get to a sustainable model, right? So it took them a while to get out of that mode and really force them to think about how we create these value streams.
What do you think was the greatest, what do you think you did that had the greatest impact on getting them to change the way that they operated?
It was my introduction of the dual operating model, which finally got them to think that I didn't have to destroy my hierarchy. See, as in most IT shops, your position in the hierarchy depends on how large an organization you own, right? Your span of control. So most of the time when Agile comes in, we talk about flattening the hierarchy, which means people are worried about losing their jobs. So in Toyota, that's not so much of a problem because once you're an employee at Toyota, you don't lose your job, but you may not have the same job you had before. And so they were worried about that. So describing it that way allowed them to relax a little bit. The other thing that we made sure that happened is once we got into the network, we said you have to get a product owner there that's empowered. And this particular program had a very empowered product owner. He was not very high in the organization, but a lot of overhead got cut off because before he used to have to talk all the way up to 3 or 4 levels of management before he made a decision, and now he was able to make the decision. And one of the things that he did was pretty interesting is after running Scrum for a few months, he got a message from one of these high-level VPs, like, haven't had one of your status meetings in a while. What's going on with your project? And it says, well, we're not going to do those anymore, but here is when the sprint review is, so if you'd like to know, come join us.
Sounds great.
That worked out really great.
So basically, what helped to drive the change was the reduction in fear and the raise in empowerment.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.